Wijarwadi atau Wijarwadi, Mas?
Oh, ya, oke. Halo,
Mas, maaf Mas,
masih di mute
masih di
kayaknya.
mute kayaknya. Kami tidak bisa dengar.
Sorry for that. So it's Wendy Wijawadi. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, so it's Wijarwadi. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, so it's Wendy Wijarwadi or Wijarwadi?
It's Wijawadi.
Wijarwadi,
J.
okay. Excellent, thank you. So,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for willing to talk to us. How long have you been living in Australia?
So actually, this is my second year. My
Uh-huh.
second year in Australia. So, but for the fasting in Ramadan is my third year because in my first year, it's like a week before Ramadan. So technically, this is my third Ramadan in Australia, in
Third
Sydney.
cycle.
Oh,
Okay,
so,
that's great.
so are you doing your PhD there or?
Yes, I'm doing my PhD at Sydney at UNSW. So this is my third year too in Sydney.
And you're there with your family, I understand?
Yes,
Okay,
of
great.
course. It's the most important thing.
Okay, please stay on standby. On air in about 30 seconds, yeah.
And you're back on Starting Point, still with me, Luisa Kusnandar and Uli Herdi, where in this segment we will interview one of our diaspora who is currently living in Sydney, and we will find out how it's like to be fasting in Sydney.
Yes, Luisa. So being in a foreign country does not mean that a Muslim should quit all Islamic rituals, of course. That's including fasting in Ramadan. So to know more about activities of Indonesian Muslims staying or living abroad, this morning we will talk with a number of diaspora, and joining us now through Zoom is Wendy Wijarwadi, Indonesian diaspora, who is now in Sydney, Australia. Good morning, Ms. Wendy. How are you today? What time is it in Australia at the moment?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's 12:20 in Australia, so it's kind of midday.
Oh, so it is. So how long have you been fasting for today?
So we start fasting 5:35. 5:35 is the subuh, the azan subuh for today. So it's maybe around, let's say 7 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
7 hours,
So it's
and you will keep
but
on
not-
fasting until what time
yes,
today?
Not zuhur yet. We will have our iftar at 7:10 today.
Okay.
7:10. So yeah.
Okay.
So it's more or less just like you know, the not too long compared to what you do in Indonesia as well.
Yeah. Mas Wendy, tell us in Sydney at the moment, how is the weather? Is it there? And you told us before off air, this is your third time around fasting in Sydney. So tell us, how is the experience so far?
So this is my third fasting in Sydney, Australia, but the first time when I experienced fasting in summer, even though it's kind of the end of summer, because now we still have a daylight saving. So it means that, let's say the difference between Sydney and Jakarta, it's 4 hours. In the last 2 years, it's 3 hours difference. So it's quite similar time, and also quite, the weather is quite nice. But then in my first week, it's quite hot, it's still hot, humid, and it's typical summer in Australia keep changing. But now in the second week of Ramadan, it's much better, and the weather is start now. I think now autumn or fall in Sydney, so actually it's nice weather to have fasting in this time.
So, Mas Wendy, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a quick story about how you end up in Australia for study, and what's the background and the nature of your study? Are you taking your PhD or something? And are you there by yourself or with your family? And how's the atmosphere has been going on with you or your family during this Ramadan month so far?
So I'm LPDP awardee. So I've been in Sydney since 2022. Once the border was opened because of the COVID, so we have like a break for the study. So I'm under the PhD and School of Education. So I'm doing research on teacher development here in UNSW, and for sure because PhD is like 4 years study, so I bring my family with me, and it is nice to have my family. But then during Ramadan, I have two kids at the moment. The first one is 10 years old. The second one is 6 years old. The challenge is more on how to convince them to experience and even to have full fasting during this summer at the first week of Ramadan. So my first son even not complain, but I have to have like a dialogue with him that you need to have like a full Ramadan, even do some challenges. But for my second kids, it's just half passing, half no. So let's start. She started sahur at 6 in the morning, and then like has meals 12 o'clock, and then have another fasting for 6 hours until Maghrib. So it's quite challenging for kids, but for me, in terms of fasting, is so far so good.
So far, so good. I mean, I can imagine it's always a different vibe. I mean,
Yeah.
like fasting here in Indonesia together. We have such a big Muslim community here, and we're doing it together, and it's such a celebration. Every day we have buka puasa bersama or bukber. While there, I mean, it's such a smaller community of Indonesian there. Tell us more about the challenges you are facing fasting in Sydney at the moment, Mas Wendy.
I think more about the vibes in terms of hungry and thirsty. I mean, it's not something that I'm dealing with. It's just fine. But more about the vibes, because here Ramadan and not Ramadan is just the same. I don't really feel the different, especially in this university. Uh, I sometimes miss like the sounds from the mosque, early in the morning. It's very peaceful. But here, it's difficult, and even it's not allowed to have that kind of sound here in Sydney. But I'm fortunate. I'm living in Sydney, where the Muslim population is quite good in terms of number. So let's say in Sydney itself, according to data I read, it's like most Muslim in Australia living in Sydney, but in Western Sydney. I live in the eastern side of Sydney, where Muslim community it's quite limited. So uh, I feel more vibes when I join, let's say, the iftar. In my university, we have a regular iftar on the weekends of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Like Muslim from different countries, they prepare iftar for us, and it's like at least I can feel the vibe like 3 times at the weekend.
So, Mas Wendy, following up Lisa's question about being part of a community there, are you a part of a certain community in Australia? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about these communities that you've been joining so far.
Um, I joined with Student Muslim Association of Indonesian students here at the university, and we just had our first iftar, which is the opener for iftar in this university last week. It's quite a big iftar, honestly, and some people wait for Indonesian iftar because the food we offer is very nice for them, especially the rendang part is like the people miss from Indonesian food. And we had that in the first week. I also joined with Nahdlatul Ulama Sydney, where we gather like once in a week or at least one or twice in a month to have our iftar. And at least it helps me to experience a bit of Indonesian Ramadan, even though I can say it's nothing comparing to Ramadan in Indonesia. And in Sydney, we also have the biggest Ramadan market actually in Australia. We call it Lakemba Ramadan Market. It's a very huge event, started from 5 p.m. until 4 a.m. in the morning, whole Ramadan. And they also have open air Taraweh, which is very interesting. And it's the only, like, every time I go there, then I can feel the vibes. Okay, I'm in Ramadan. Even though, I mean, the distance from my uni to that market is, let's say, 1 hour. But it's at least we still have good community here in Sydney for doing iftar, doing fasting in Ramadan.
Well, that's great to know. I mean, at least you get that sense of Ramadan festivities happening, even though you're currently living in Sydney and already going for your third year there. Mas Wendy, can you tell us more about the tolerance level of the Australians there and all the other nations? We know that Sydney is a melting pot too. How is the tolerance level with all the Muslims doing their fasting at the moment?
I can say that the tolerance level, it's I can say it's amazing in Sydney. For example, my personal experience in this first week of Ramadan, I had a discussion with my supervisor, and she offered me to have less activities in Ramadan because she assumed that I will have no food, no drink for, let's say, 12 hours, and maybe my body will a bit weak. So then she told me that it's okay if you want to have less frequent meeting or doing your PhD during Ramadan. It's fine. So I mean, like, oh, it's so amazing. I don't ask for that, but my supervisor just called me and offering that kind of service during Ramadan. And also in terms of the community, it's quite easy. Like at the uni, they provide a space and even like a room for us to do tarawih. So we have tarawih nightly at the university, and also people surrounding. Let's say in my kid's school, they know that this is Ramadan, and they know that if, let's say, my kid wants, if for example a physical activity they don't want to join, it's totally fine because it's something that a school used to have once in a year, and it's something that okay, Muslim having fasting, and they may, especially for a young kid, they may have like a week to some extent. Then yeah, and also in terms of that Lakemba market, it's in the middle. I mean, it's in near the heart of Sydney, and I feel that the community is very supportive, and even not only Muslim coming to that market, especially it's for everyone. Like I read in TikTok in Indonesia now we have takjil war. We also have a bit of that kind of sense here, but everyone can go to that Lakemba market night.
So, Mas Wendy, you told us a little bit about your routine. You told us stories about doing tarawih or the nightly praying during Ramadan, and also you shared stories also about takjil. So maybe you can share with us about your routine during this Ramadan with you and your family. Do you go to any mosque? Is there any mosque near to your place? And what's the difference between the mosques in Indonesia and the mosques that you find in Sydney?
Of course, the number, I think the number of mosques is very limited. Let's say in the place I live now, the nearest one I have, actually I live nearby the mosque in my area. It's only 1 kilo. It's managed by Bangladeshi Muslim brothers. The thing is, one of the room is closed due to maintenance during Ramadan. So if I come there, most likely it will be full. So then it's limit my opportunity to have tarawih at the mosque. And if I want to go to the uni, because now the time for tarawih is not 9 p.m. at night, so it's kind of I didn't go there at least in the last week. I only go there one or two times in the beginning because of the time constraint. So again, I mean, what I appreciate from Indonesia is easy. We can go to any mosque we want. Even we can choose based on the duration of tarawih. Like, okay, this one is shorter, this one is quite long. Then we can choose. But here, that option is, I can say we have no option. Like there are only 2 or 3 months, then we have to go there. But yeah.
Okay, you make do. I mean, like you're doing a great job at the moment so far, fasting in Sydney. Mas Wendy, the Ramadan holiday is just in a couple of weeks. As you know, in Indonesia, people are already planning to book their tickets
Yeah.
to go back to their hometown. It's mudik time. What about you? Do you have any plans to come back to Indonesia, mudik, or are you going to have like a short holiday there in Sydney?
Unfortunately, no, because if Idul Fitri this year will fall on weekday.
Oh,
Yeah, I have to go to the uni. My kids need to go to the school, and even in the day of Ramadan, I just knew yesterday that my kid, my little daughter, will have a trip to Opera House
oh wow.
exactly on 11th of April. So now, I'm still discussing with my wife like what to do. Like, should we go somewhere? Because if we like hold our daughter to go to Opera House, it's going to be once in a lifetime moment going to Opera House with classmate. And also for my wife, it's like she need to go to for work. It's not a weekday, so yeah, I think this year's gonna be just normal day for me. So maybe on the weekend. Normally the embassy they have open house. Yeah,
Ah.
but fortunately weekday this year most likely. So.
Okay, so
Oh.
as Luisa mentioned before, usually in Indonesia during the Lebaran or the end of the Ramadan, people are visiting one another. And you also mentioned earlier that sometimes Indonesians goes to the embassy as well. Can you tell us maybe stories about your involvement with the Indonesian communities from the embassy during this Ramadan month also, Mas Wendy?
Yeah, personally, I can say I have a good relation with embassy because I join in some communities, as I mentioned earlier, in Muslim Student Association and Nahdlatul Ulama Sydney. So we kind of have a regular event in embassy, and even next week, I just got invitation. They will have like iftar at the embassy next week, and during the Lebaran or Idul Fitri, last year, I think last year was the best if Idul Fitri because falls at the weekend. So for me personally, I attended at least 6 open house.
Wow.
Wow.
To any open house I came because it's full of meet Indonesian people, full of food, and meeting like to feel the vibe is the most important. But I don't know this year because it's on weekdays. I still hope that people can still have open house, or maybe they move open house to the weekend. I don't know, but yeah, I think the embassy is here is great to support the community,
Yeah.
especially during Ramadan and Idul Fitri.
Yeah, especially like in Sydney, we know there is a big Indonesian community living in Sydney. So it's great that you have joined this community together, and the embassy is very welcoming, and they have all this event happening during the Ramadan season. Now, Mas Wendy, you've been living in Sydney for 3 years now. Tell us more about Sydney. What do you like about living there? What do you miss from Indonesia so far, too?
Uh, Sydney, I told to my friend that Sydney is like New York, but in a smaller size. So it's a melting pot. So the best part of living in Sydney is I can like experience different cultures in different places because like Sydney is a big actually the greater Sydney is a large area where certain community living in certain places. For example, in Indonesia or Muslim community, most people live in they call it Bankstown, Canterbury. Even like my friend living there, that specific area is called as unofficial capital city of Islam in Australia because the number of Muslim is quite big. And also, of course, the food. I like the food here in Sydney. Like I can, I can have like Vietnamese food, Japanese food, Korean food, or Middle East food, and all of them are halal. And it's quite easy to get halal food in Sydney. And also, living in Sydney for almost 3 years. The best part, of course, the weather. Um, Pollution is something that really happens here, and also the traffic because Sydney is big, but the people is not that big, so it's easy to commute between places. Yeah, it's the thing I like the most from Sydney. But still, I mean, I miss Indonesia, especially during this kind of situation because if I don't go to that Taraweeh, to that iftar, to that open house, I can say I feel lonely, or maybe at least with my family. So I miss the vibe. Nothing comparing to Indonesian Ramadan, honestly.
Mas Wendy, thank you so much for sharing the story. We're so happy to hear that you sounds like you're having a great time in Sydney. And please send our best regards to your family as well.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
for
us
having
on
me.
Starting Point. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mas Wendy.